Hello everyone, I am just popping on to do a little video and I've been thinking a little bit about induction of labour recently and a few things have come up in the group, so I thought I would post about them because I think induction of labour is something that a lot of people are quite unprepared for, to be honest, and sometimes don't totally understand. So I wanted to kind of randomly speak to you about that. Please, if you're here, give me a wave, say hello, ask any questions. And if you're watching this on replay, also let me know if you've got any questions too. So I have, in the comments, I have popped a few resources up there for you. My big disclaimer is that isn't induction one of the most wonderful things ever, and aren't we lucky to have it? Induction saves lives, and as a midwife I have seen it save many lives as well. I didn't introduce myself, so I'm Gemma Nealon. I'm one of the team who set up this group to support you during the pandemic. I also teach hypnobirthing workshops, and I also am co-founder of Birth Trauma Scotland, so I work treating birth trauma as well. So yes, induction of labour is one of the most wonderful things ever that saves lives, and we're very lucky to have it. However, what's very important for you guys to understand is it is a different kind of labour. Absolutely, it's a totally different kettle of fish. It definitely can be positive. In fact, one of the links I put on the comments here is a link to my website sharing a lot of positive induction stories. So in general, I know that you might just be bombarded with the negative ones, and I want you to know that with the right preparation, it can be positive, but I really do believe that you're going to have to put a lot of prep in to make it that case. So there are lots of different kinds of induction. One of the ways, and something that's become very popular, is the Foley balloon. It's the balloon induction. So basically they're inserting, it's basically like a balloon into your cervix and inflating it. And we know that that stimulation can help stimulate prostaglandins, which make your cervix dilate, and also stimulate oxytocin, which makes your uterus contract. That's one form of induction. Another form of induction would be to, sometimes they insert prostaglandins, which are the hormones that naturally make your cervix dilate. That can be inserted as a gel onto your cervix, or sometimes as a pessary, which is like, it's really like a tampon, but they insert it into your cervix, and that releases the prostaglandin. Another thing that they can do is break your waters. So we know that if your cervix is dilated enough, that breaking your waters can trigger contraction, labour and birth. In fact, 75% of people whose waters break go into labour within 24 hours. Another form of the lower intervention is a membrane sweep, which we can go on to talk about. And then last but not least would be an oxytocin drip. So that's when they would insert a venflon, a cannula, into your hand, and through that you would have synthetic oxytocin. Oxytocin is the hormone that makes your uterus contract, put in a drip to help you contract. Now, I don't know, and in fact the staff looking after you don't necessarily know in what order or which ones they would give you. It all depends on many things. So for example, if when it's time for you to be induced, your cervix is dilated enough for them to break your waters, then they would maybe do that rather than go for some prostaglandins or the balloon induction. If you weren't dilated enough, then potentially what would happen would be you would maybe have the prostaglandin gel or pessary, or they would go for the balloon induction, depending on what trust is, the trust within Scotland and what their policy is. Again, depending on the situation. I've just got a parcel delivery. Just give me 1 second. Reese? I have to go and get the door. Give me 1 second. Reese? There's someone at the door. Can you answer it, please? Sorry, typical. And my husband's going to get it. What was I saying? Yes. What was I saying? Tell me what I'm saying if you're watching. Hi, Rose. So I don't necessarily know what they would start with. Yes, the other thing is, depending on what's going on in your trust, you would potentially have the induction from the beginning in hospital, or not. So some of you, if you're particularly high risk, or depending on what's happening in your trust, or depending on what's happening with the COVID-19, you may be in for the whole of your induction. Some of you would have some of it done and then you'd be sent home. Sorry, I missed the start. You're going to talk about the balloon induction. Go back and re-watch it, and if you've got any specific questions, ask. So the reason I'm rambling on, I got totally distracted by delivery there, is that you might potentially have all of your labour in hospital. Now, research shows that the longer you stay at home, the less likely you are to have intervention. And the reason for that is a lot to do with the environment, the calm, relaxed environment. So if you're going to be induced, you need to really be prepared for creating that calm environment and getting yourself in that headspace, in that lovely relaxed space as you give birth, as you start the induction. What a lot of people do is they get into the induction and there's a hospital bed there on a ward, so they lie down and they basically watch their clock and they're looking at the walls of the hospital room, and that's really tricky. So I want you to absolutely brainstorm, if you are going to be induced, what you need to do to keep yourself as calm and relaxed as possible, rather than literally lying in the hospital bed waiting. And, you know, I love hypnobirthing for that. It's going to give you so many techniques. That's wonderful as well. When it comes to the oxytocin drip, so if the oxytocin drip would be the last thing, so hopefully you'll just need a little push to get yourself into labour. If you end up with the oxytocin drip, one of the reasons that can be trickier is because it doesn't cross the blood-brain barrier. So it will give you contractions. It will make your uterus contract, but it won't make you produce the other hormones, the oxytocin, when it naturally does. So oxytocin, when it's naturally induced, makes you feel calm. It makes you feel relaxed. It makes you feel loving. And it triggers endorphins, which are natural pain relief, okay? If you have synthetic oxytocin, it just purely makes the physical response, okay? So this is why it can be more painful and you can be more likely to have other forms of intervention. So you guys are going to have to work harder to get the natural oxytocin and the endorphins ready. I'm pretty much saying this because retrospective research shows that women wish they were told more about induction, particularly post-dates induction. So often you will be told, oh yeah, so you're going overdue, let's just pop you in the diary and we'll get you in and we'll get the baby out. So then you go, okay, brilliant. Oh, well, I'm going to go in a week's time and I'm going to have my baby. Get your head round the fact it's a different form of labour and birth. It's potentially, in most circumstances, going to be harder, and you're going to have to work a bit harder. 30%, I think it's around about 30% of people I know, at least in Lothian, are induced. So there's quite a few hundred of you pregnant in this group right now. Hundreds of you are going to be induced, statistically, okay? So prepare when you're doing your birth preparation. Don't think it won't happen to me. You may be induced. And I know that whenever I teach my hypnobirthing workshop, I'm always like, this is boot camp. Let's prepare for everything. Let's prepare for induction. Let's prepare for all situations. And that pays off, because I know that the people who I work with have positive inductions. You can have positive induction, but please go in with your eyes wide open and do everything you can to have a plan for what are you going to do if it takes 24 hours even for your contractions to start. What are you going to do when you're in a ward, which is a room with maybe curtains around them? You know, can you fill your laptop with DVDs, movies to watch? What could you do, you know, to keep yourself occupied? Have you got hypnosis tracks on your headphones? Have you got lovely music? Have you got people who you can call and have a chat to who are going to relax you? What kind of visualizations are you going to do? What kind of things are you going to do to basically giving that message to your body that, yes, it's time to birth? Because if while you're being induced, you're bombarding yourself with adrenaline, which is the hormone that's produced when you're in a state of fear, adrenaline blocks birthing hormones. Adrenaline blocks oxytocin that makes your uterus contract and blocks endorphins, which are natural pain relief. So I'm totally rambling, but I've just seen a few things come up on the group. So I wanted to just touch base to people who maybe just haven't really thought about induction and thought, well, I'm not really going to think about it and I'll just, go along with it. That's totally fine, and many of us need induction, but just please understand, prepare for it so that you can have the most positive birth experience possible. A little bit about post-dates induction. There is someone that I highly recommend, in fact I slightly worship, is hi Siobhan, and you may agree with me, Siobhan, is Sarah Wickham, is like goddess when it comes to midwifery research. She is prior to being midwife, she was a research analyst, which is what's so cool about her. So as I know as a midwife, because I'm a bit of a research geek, just because something's research doesn't necessarily mean it's even that good research. So she's so good at looking at research and being like, that research isn't good, you can't even listen to it, or yes, no, we need to look at this research. So she's very balanced, but she's written a book called it's a booklet called Post-Dates Induction. It's printed in association with the Association of Improvement for Maternity Services, also known as AIMS, AIMS. I would highly recommend getting this book if you're thinking about post-dates induction, so you know what you're getting yourself in for, so you know what your options are. And there's also a link on this chat to an article with resources. I just wanted to mention a little bit about membrane sweeps. It's entirely up to you whether or not you want to get a membrane sweep or not. I never used to comment on membrane sweeps, but I saw a bit of a big movement over the last few years of people going, birth's totally natural, I'm not going to have it. That's totally fine, but I think what was very important to understand is that, or what I found as a midwife, is that we don't birth in an ideal world where we're left to birth and just go into spontaneous labour. You are giving a bit of a sell-by date. So I know that when I had both of my babies, I chose to have membrane sweeps because I wanted to do everything I possibly could to increase my chance of going into spontaneous labour. Now, some people say that membrane sweeps are a form of induction, but I suppose they're very, 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 very low risk. There is a little bit of research that there's a very small increase in infection if you have a membrane sweep. But I suppose what I would say, if you're inserting anything into your vagina, there's going to be an increase of induction. Intercourse is often used as a form of induction because semen naturally has prostaglandins, which make your uterus contract. That would also increase infection, but we're talking a very small amount. I did link to some research that says that you're more likely to go into spontaneous labour. This research, there's not much research on membrane sweeps, to be honest, but this research didn't necessarily affect birth outcomes, but please don't underestimate the benefits of going into spontaneous labour, even if it's emotional. So someone who works with birth trauma, I know that sometimes the process of induction can, for some people, if you're not fully prepared or depending on the situation, can be quite traumatic. So please don't underestimate that. I just wanted to mention membrane sweeps. The other benefit that again isn't mentioned in research is, I find as a midwife, a huge benefit to membrane sweeps is information that you wouldn't normally have. I don't know if Siobhan, who's one of our amazing midwives who volunteers for the group, who's works in Grampian, will agree that it gives information. So a mum might come, say at 42 weeks for membrane sweep, and have membrane sweep and not really be, nothing's happening, cervix isn't dilated. Sometimes that manages expectations a little bit. Then I find when she comes in a week later, effing and blinding, she's so annoyed because she hasn't had her baby. We do a membrane sweep. I'm like, well, actually, you're more dilated or your cervix is softened, and that can be really reassuring that something's happening. I also find, I know I'm going on a tangent about membrane sweeps, they can actually be really good practice if it feels right to you for vaginal examinations in labour. I know particularly with all the techniques that I teach, I would always say to someone to use those techniques to stay as relaxed as possible during a membrane sweep. But the other thing I want to prefix it with is, if it isn't right for you, this instinct, then don't do it. Particularly for women who have a history of sexual abuse, things like membrane sweeps and vaginal examinations can be very traumatic. So I suppose I also want to mention that if you do have that history, it's worth discussing that with your midwife, so that they are aware. If examinations are needed, you might say particularly that you only want an examination from a female midwife or obstetrician if you'd feel more comfortable with that. These are the kind of things that are worth writing in your birth plan, and or worth getting in touch with someone who works with trauma who can help you so that you have as many skills to be as relaxed as possible during things like memory sweeps or vaginal examinations. Anyway, I'm totally and utterly rambling. Is there anything else you want to know? Really, the whole point of this was me just to rant at you, to say, please prepare yourself for induction. Please go in with your eyes wide open, but also please know that you can have positive, amazing, peaceful births. I've seen it. As I said, blog on my website about lots of positive induction stories. Thing that all of those couples and women had in common was that they prepared for induction. It was boot camp, and they had lots of skills in their toolkit. So prepare for everything is what I say. Focus on the birth you want, but be prepared for all situations. Be prepared in what are you going to do emotionally? How are you going to relax if you end up in theatre? How are you going to relax if you end up in labour ward, even though you wanted to go to the birth centre? Because if you have really strong, powerful relaxation skills, the chances are you're less likely to need those interventions. But at least if you do, you know what to do to make sure that you have a really peaceful, calm birth. Siobhan, is there anything else I need to say about induction of labour? Knowledge is power. Yes. Knowledge is power. Also, the right knowledge is power. So I would spend your time upskilling yourself so you know how to instantly relax in all circumstances and keep yourself calm and ask the right questions, as opposed to researching all complications and basically trying to I always say to people when I'm teaching, if you have a triple heart bypass, you wouldn't research all the implements that the surgeon uses and what angle they cut at, for example. But when we become pregnant, that's often what we do. So instead of doing that, research how to get yourself as well as possible in the right mindset, because the staff know what they're doing when it comes to inserting things and all these kind of stuff. You don't need to know about that. If anything, that's just going to make you go in feeling scared and focusing on that. Focus on what you can do. Caroline, are any of the types of induction painful? This is something I'm quite anxious about, and I'm not very good at dealing with pain. Hi, Lindsay. Feel free to butt in, Lindsay, if we have a wonderful midwife, Lindsay, here. Are any of the types of induction painful? I suppose to some extent it depends on the person. It depends on what stage you're at. So for example, if you have your waters broken and you're really dilated, some people, if you're quite far on, you might not necessarily feel that. Some people, if they have a pessary inserted, they're like, oh, that wasn't that bad, that was okay. And some people do find it really painful. So it's very, very hard to say. I think it all depends on what's going on in your frame of mind. I'm just getting a notification, turn off my phone, and how prepared you are. So we know that relaxation techniques, hypnobirthing techniques, work really powerfully to make yourself feel calm. So what I would say, Caroline, is learn some hypnobirthing techniques, or do a hypnobirthing workshop, or look at other techniques you can do to stay as relaxed as possible. So what's really interesting, I was sharing this in my hypnobirthing workshop last weekend, when it comes to pain thresholds are really interesting, fascinating things. And we actually think it's not really a thing. So you just said you're not very good with pain. And when they give people electric shocks, they find that people tend to feel it as painful at the same time. So if they give people a buzzer and they say, right, press the buzzer when the electric shock's painful, everyone tends to do it around about the same time. But they then split them into two groups, and one group they'll give the electric shock at the same level, but they'll make them watch images of war, and the other group don't watch the images of war. And what happens is the ones that watch the images of war while getting the electric shock feel the pain sooner. They then do the same, but in one group they just get the electric shock, and the other group are sleep deprived. They're not allowed to sleep for a night before. And guess who feels the pain sooner? It's the group that are sleep deprived. When we're sleep deprived, when we're watching images of war, if we're feeling fear, we're producing adrenaline. So the best thing you can do, Caroline, is to have skills to keep yourself relaxed, because it's impossible to be relaxed and anxious at the same time, relaxed and scared at the same time. So yes, if you can be as relaxed as possible, we're going to reduce the adrenaline and it won't be so painful. Does that answer your question? Kind of. I'm totally like just chatting now about random stuff. Lindsay, is there anything you want to mention? Do you think that's important? Wonderful, Lindsay, midwife who's been working at St John's Hospital recently. So we have in the group, we have a midwife from Glasgow, an independent midwife from Glasgow. We've got someone up in Aberdeenshire, and we've got midwives at St John's, at the Royal Infirmary in Edinburgh. If you are in an area and you do not have you feel like there's not enough info on your area, we have a lovely network of midwives and we can probably find a midwife from your area. Please look through the links. Oh, the other thing is, do you know the best induction tool out of everything that blows my mind, is the most research-based, is eating dates. You're laughing right now, you don't believe me. Look at my video on eating dates. There's a link in the comments. Out of anything to reduce your chance of needing induction in the first place, of needing induction through your labour, of shortening your labour, needing any form of pain relief, it's eating dates, seriously, and that's research based. So go in the links and watch that video, and then you can also read the research. So you need to be eating 6 dates a day from the last 4 weeks of pregnancy. Siobhan says, absolutely agree that membrane sweeps can provide information to women that they would have otherwise not known. The cervix has so much work to do in effacement, thinning, softening, shortening can be reassuring. Totally. Do whatever you can to increase your chance of a natural birth. In fact, what's really interesting is I recently read about a trust down in England, and they have a post-dates clinic. So they have a post-dates clinic, and what it is a team of midwives who basically do antenatal checks. They do I think it's like acupressure points and massage. And they've reduced their post-dates induction by 30%, which is a huge statistic. So when I was reading that a couple of days ago, I was like, relaxation, acupressure. So these are kind of things to look into yourself. Basically, it's back to anything that relaxes you. So there has been no research on, for example, hypnobirthing and chances of post-date induction. Yeah, it's just not been done. But I always wonder if people who use hypnobirthing are less likely to need to be induced. They say the conditions you need to go into birth are the same, or to fall into labour, are the same conditions you need to fall into sleep. You need to be calm. You need to be relaxed. The message to your body needs to be, there's no adrenaline, there's no fear here, so that you can produce those lovely hormones, oxytocin, that makes your uterus contract, and the endorphins are natural pain relief. So Carol Ann, that's your homework. That's what I challenge you to do between now and giving birth, whether or not you're induced in that or not, is that you will birth easier and more peacefully if you're calm. So that's pregnancy yoga. We have a wonderful pregnancy yoga teacher here, Marcella, who is offering pregnancy yoga. All of these things are good. That's made me think, as I mentioned, Marcella, she a few days ago put a wonderful post of she's a doula, of photographs of a high-risk labour ward room that she transformed, and it's really inspiring. So these are kind of ideas of things you can do to create that homely environment. Even if you are having a high-risk induction, you can make it dark, you can make it quiet, you can get battery-operated fairy lights, you can put photographs up that mean things to you. Create that environment, that cave, that cocoon, so that you're more relaxed. Anyway, I'm going on now. I'm just going to shut up because, as you can hear, I can go on for ages. While you're watching, those of you who are watching, tell me what else you want me to put a video on about. Those of you, a few of you who've done my hypnobirthing workshop, I can talk about anything, and you need to shut me up sometimes. But if you're missing some information that's not out there, or you want me to talk about, don't know, whatever, when to go to hospital, for example, I don't know, comment down below and I'll do a video on it. Anyway, I'm going to go because my phone's about to run out of batteries. What do? I press finish. Okay, bye. Comment, any questions, anything. The whole group of the team are here. We have all different kind of experts in the team. But yeah, biggest top tip, prepare for birth mentally, learn how to relax, and you can have peaceful birth. I've had 2 amazing births. Okay, bye. I'm going to shut up now.